welcome to We Got a podcast normally about Dragon Ball. From Earth to Jirai to Geminar, we're going to cover it all. My name is Randy.
And I'm Doug.
And I'm the space pirate, Ken.
Hey, we've got an amazing interview with Petrea Burchard, the voice of Ryoko, this episode. But in case you didn't know who Ryoko is or what Tenchi Muyo is, let's recap. So, Tenchi Muyo is an anime, light novel, and manga franchise originally created by Masaki Kajishima.
Kajishima originally started work as a key animator and animation director, working on the 80s remake of Gegege no Kitaro and a bunch of other series you've probably heard of.
The original Tenchi OVA, or original video animation, Tenchi Muyo Ryooki. Muyo means useless, futile, often translated for the franchise as no need for. Ran from September 1992 to March 1993.
The story follows a boy named Tenchi Masaki, owing his surname to his creator's given name, who becomes involved in various fantasy and sci-fi battles after a bunch of women come to live with him.
Since the original OVA, which has continued as recently as 2021, Tenchi Muyo has spawned multiple spin-off television series. Ever heard of Dual Parallel Adventure? I haven't. Manga, light novels, 3 movies, and alternate universe takes on the original OVA's premise, widely known as Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo.
And fun fact, Tenchi in Tokyo's soundtrack was composed by Shunsuke Kikuchi of Dragon Ball fame. Look it up. It's wild.
Kukushi?
The very same, Doug.
Love that guy.
In the US, the first 2 OVAs, Tenchi Universe and Tenchi in Tokyo, began airing on Toonami in July 2000. These series would air one right after the other, day after day, until they looped from the end of Tenchi in Tokyo back to the beginning of the first OVA.
Tenchi usually aired right after Gundam Wing or Dragon Ball Z in Toonami's lineup until it ended in circulation in May 2002.
And Dual Parallel Adventure, a spin-off series, aired on Tech TV in 2003.
So, quite the history there of the Tenchi franchise, but I think we're going to really start with what our history with the Tenchi franchise is. And I think the easiest one to start with is probably Doug, because you've got a storied history.
Do I? you remind me, because I don't remember. No. I think it was one of the first anime I've actually ever came across in my youth. It was that, Dragon Ball and Pokemon, but it was such a different kind of anime compared to Dragon Ball Z or Pokemon. It was just about a harem of women and one guy, and I'm like, this is very interesting. I think this is an awakening of some sorts for me. But yeah, no, I watched the series up until I think it ended, and I think it just kept doing like reruns. I never caught the later series. I think like Tenchi in Universe or whatever, like stuff afterwards. But no, I remember enjoying everything.
That's awesome. So this is going to be a fun sort of deep dive into it and visiting it as an adult and having it be homework where you got to pay attention.
Yeah, I mean, I think very fondly of it. So that's what I'm hoping it still stays. I still think fondly of it after this conversation.
Oh, yeah. Ken and I might have a similar sort of background, but Ken, I'd like to hear yours.
Yeah, so also it was, an awakening of sorts. I'm always surprised that it even aired on Toonami at all.
Right.
Yeah.
But it awakened me in 2 other ways. One being, it awakened me to the idea of continuities, right? Because the shows that they showed on Toonami were 3 different continuities of Tenchi, which is weird to think about them doing that, because you've heard of like the Bat embargo, right? Where, because the Chris Nolan Batman movies were in theaters, they didn't want to confuse children or whatever by having different versions of those characters on Justice League. So the only Batman villain who ever shows up in Justice League is the Joker.
That's
so for them
interesting
to have this other show where it's 3 separate continuities that just keep airing one after the other, looping. It was very weird in that way, but it kind of like brought that to mind of being able to handle that mentally, I guess. And then also brought to mind video editing for censorship purposes, because obviously there's a very famous episode of this show in which you have multiple nude characters. Again, this aired in the afternoon on Toonami.
Prime time.
And so they had to edit in like swimsuits and all of these characters. And even as a kid being like, this is slightly jittering out of frame of where it should be from this. And so, brought that kind of stuff. Anyways, I've always loved the series. I have a whole bunch of Tenchi merch that I have from when I was a kid. So Tenchi, Ryooki, and other characters, of course, Ryoko. But then I've got characters from Tenchi Universe who I don't even, Nagato, maybe?
Naga.
Naga, and then I don't even remember this guy, so we'll get to him eventually at some point.
Yeah.
But and then I have like the old McFarlane Tenchi figure who's missing parts because they just fell off, and I don't know where his sword is, and so it's fun stuff. But
that's pretty cool.
That is very cool. And actually, I want to correct myself. It might not be, because I might be thinking of that character from Slayers, those OVAs, because I believe her name was Naga. So I have to look it up. It's been a bit since I've seen Universe. Gosh, I'm kind of jealous of those. I used to have that Tenchi and that Ryo-Oki figure, but those other ones are new to me. That's very, very cool.
Ryo-Oki was such a cool ass character too. Like to think of like just as a kid seeing this little creature turn into a freaking ship. How freaking awesome is that? Like, that's peak like badassness in the early 2000s.
Oh yeah, and turns into a mech in a different series. So there's that. You know, there's another continuity that we didn't talk about, which is the Pretty Sammy TV series and OVA, which is a magical girl story where Sasami is actually, you know, basically Sailor Moon and Ryo-Oki being like her Luna. It's pretty wild. We got that over here. It didn't air on TV, and it was sub-only home release. It's like the only thing they didn't dub.
Probably why I've never heard of it before, because I was still like, you know, a W back then.
That's totally fair. And then we've got other things like, oh God, what's that other Sasami one that came out in the mid-2000s? Was it just called Sasami or something like that?
No idea.
You don't know?
And frankly speaking, my Tenchi experience is what aired on Toonami. I've never seen OVA 3, 4, or 5, or any of the other stuff. It was really, I'm just locked into what they showed on TV at that time.
Okay, so I have a bit of a different background then, because I also started watching it on Toonami. I think I caught it at the very end of episode 5, episode 6 of OVA 1, because I remember seeing Ayeka reacting to a thing that happens at the end of episode 5. I was like, what is this show? Because I was like on vacation that week, so I wasn't at home to be watching cable. And then I was like, okay, whatever. And then the show's over. And then it started over. And I was like, oh, okay. So in about 4 more days, I'm going to see what happened in that episode. And then that thing didn't happen because Toonami, like you said, aired these back to back. But I don't think they did any sort of explanation. Like, these are different continuities, different shows entirely.
I don't think I even caught on to that. Like, I couldn't tell you a single plot thread of this. I just remember a guy living with a bunch of girls and hijinks ensue. And they all love him for some reason.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's typical harem stuff. Is the most boring average man in all of Japan gets all of the hotties. So, you know,
well, maybe I didn't follow the story because they kept interchanging, like you said, different series. I'm just like, oh, there's no point in me trying to follow this at all.
And some series have an extra girl, and sometimes the backgrounds of certain characters have entirely changed. You're either, you know, a scientist / goddess, or you're a space pirate, or like everything just keeps changing. But I had watched the stuff on Toonami, and then I had a friend of mine who had an older brother who was big into anime, and they had the movies on DVD. So he came over and we watched those. And I got to experience that. And then, you know, I was hooked on this stuff. I got a job in high school, and then OVA 3 started to come out on DVD here. So I got that, and I was keeping up with everything that was going on there. GXP, I didn't see until a lot later, but, you know, that was also a thing that was coming out here. Weirdly, that one got obtained by Funimation versus Genion / Pioneer that was bringing stuff over before. So it's a whole wild, wacky world, but like, I love it. I'm not as much into a whole bunch of other harem stuff, but, you know, it was fun, and I don't think anything else has ever caught my interest like this did. Maybe it's because of the characters or like the sci-fi elements that are also there. But it's an enjoyable show, and yeah, I mean, I'm still in love with Ryoko. She's such a great character, so fun, and, you know, rambunctious, and could beat me up and kick my ass, and I like that.
And you'd gladly, accept it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, is there anything else we want to bring up about our histories with this franchise? Because that's basically it.
I'm sure we'll get into more of it as we start going through the OVA and start like unlocking Doug's memories that he didn't know yet.
So much corn.
Well, awesome. Yeah. So you can look forward to us talking about the show in later episodes. We're going to be watching OVA 1, which is the first. Is it 6 or 7? I always forget.
7.
There are.
It's 6 episodes and then like a special, but we just lumped that in with OVA 1.
Oh, we're actually watching it. This isn't just a one-off Tenchi Muyo podcast episode. Yes, man. Let's go. All right. I'm looking forward to that.
I've never seen Doug excited for homework, so that's really, really good. And now these are OVAs, so they aren't TV length. Some of them are longer, so just be ready for that. And it's going to be very exciting.
Don't watch them with children.
Okay.
Yes. This was on
Snorlax, close your
Toonami, but
eyes.
everything that you could obtain now is not intended for children. There's no bathing suits on things. You could experience it the way I did after the Toonami airing, where I wanted to catch up, where I went onto eBay and I found Tenchi Muyo OVA 1 and 2 on Malaysian VCD, which it's
Whoa.
dubbed, but with English subtitles, and anything that's inappropriate, they just cut. So
It's just out.
episode 4 makes no sense, where most characters are naked most of the
That's
time.
hilarious.
And it's like 8 minutes long.
Because they put important plot threads while they're naked. So it's just like...
It's not the first time that's happened. When Outlaw Star aired on American TV, they skipped episode 23, which introduces like these 4 extra item things and that are like important to the finale. And the next episode, like, well, we got these. Like, how? Why? What are they for?
Boy, back
Explain.
then, you're just lost. You're just like, you have to put the pieces together because there's no like internet you can go back. There's no YouTube you can go back and watch. Man, it's
true.
crazy.
Yeah. That is the other thing. There isn't really a kanzenshu.com for Tenchi. There used to be something that I used to go to all the time, and maybe it's still around, but, mostly it's just fan wikis nowadays. And, there is, if you have the 1997 complete edition DVD box set, there is an encyclopedia disc, which will explain a whole bunch of things from all of the continuities in there. And I don't know where I put that. I might have given that to my sister because it's not on my shelf, and I'm kind of freaking out. So maybe... over Christmas, I'll be like, "Did you find that? I want to see that again."
Be the best gift ever.
Yeah, but I want to, say we discussed it at the beginning of the episode, and I don't want to take up any more of your time, but Ken and I sat down with Petrea Burchard, who was the original English voice actress for Ryoko, and we had a fun little chat with her, and it's a great time, so I want you to enjoy that. It was such a pleasure and an honor having her on, and it's just really great. So settle in, because here it comes. Okay, so we are here with our special guest, Petrea Burchard, voice of Ryoko, and has done a bunch of other stuff. I was taking a look at your website, and it looks like you've kind of done anything and everything. Stage, television, radio DJ. I mean, you've done it all, right?
Most of it. I don't know if I've done it all, but I've done most of it. Yeah, I started as a stage actor. Mm-hmm. And when I moved to Los Angeles, gosh, it's been 36 years ago.
Oh, wow.
I moved here and started pursuing television and film work, did more TV than film, and still continued working on stage, and then got really involved in voiceover and started loving it,
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's a great business.
I know that Ken does a lot of impressions and things, so I'm not going to put him on the spot here and make do any impressions or anything. But, Ken might ask you for some voice acting tips here and there, so that might pop up. I'm kidding. I just like to put Ken on the spot.
I do always say one of my greatest regrets is not taking theater in high school. I took choir instead because we were promised a free trip to a water park, which never panned out.
Oh.
But I always wish I had.
No. Well, it's not too late. I mean, acting is so fundamental to voice acting and everything else we do. It can't hurt.
It's true.
Just saying. Saying. Mm-hmm.
You can always find the time to do that. And you know what? That could be your new passion. And that could be really exciting.
There you go.
So you had mentioned that you had done television. I was looking through some things, and actually I had a memory, and I made sure to put it down in my notes here, that I was rewatching through How I Met Your Mother, and there's you were in an episode, and like the second I saw you and heard you, I just like stood up and pointed at the TV.
Wow.
I was like, hey.
Wow.
You, I believe, were looking to buy an art piece at a museum, and that was also an episode. It was a season 3 episode where they had Britney Spears on, and I'm just curious, did you share any shooting days with Britney Spears?
No, I didn't, and I didn't even realize she was on the show when I was there. I didn't know. And I have to say something. I recently, like a couple months ago, maybe 3 months ago, I found a box in the garage of old scripts and call sheets and stuff for all these shows I had been on. And I was not the star. It was small parts like that one. And, but I found the old scripts and things. So I did a whole bunch on Instagram. I did for Throwback Thursday, a picture of the script or whatever else I had, and then a little story about my experience on the show. And that particular show, which was a delight to work on. There were only a couple that were really bad, and I didn't mention names. But
how professional of you.
That one was just a terrific experience. They were all so very nice and so professional, and I got to wear the coolest dress. I remember the dress was, a designer dress. But at the end, after I was finished, and it was just a couple of lines, a couple of very short lines, and when I was finished, the director said, "Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Petrea Burchard is wrapped." And everybody in the place, the lead actors, the extras, the crew, the costume people, everybody applauded me.
Wow.
And I knew in that moment that they do that for everybody. That's what they did on that set. And it was just so welcoming and so cool. Yeah, that was a lovely experience.
Wow. That is very special. I mean, I have a day job that I go to every day, and I don't think anybody's ever done that for me. But I think that I should ask them to.
Yes.
I feel that would be a wonderful.
You work hard.
Yeah, and I, of course, would repay it to everybody else. Everybody puts in, the work and things like that. But that's really cool. That's really wonderful.
I'll talk to Doug and we'll start applauding for you every podcast, Randy.
Okay. I think that works. And I'll do the same for you guys. Because wonderful.
We can do that at the end, Ken. We can.
Okay.
Yeah, if you want, we can clap for everybody.
That sounds great. So I have this other one here. I was looking through, a bunch of the credits and things, and you were credited as Celeste Birch for some projects. Can you tell me what inspired that name?
Somebody wrote that on, what is that, Wikipedia?
Oh, I think it was like IMDb, and I think it was a couple of other places too as well.
No, I was credited as Celeste Birch, I think, on perhaps the first episode of Tenchi Muyo. That is the only time I ever was credited in
Goodness.
that way.
And they got it wrong. It was
she sometimes uses this name. No, she doesn't. She did once.
Okay. Well, then I apologize for that. I didn't do my research diligently well enough.
Well, apparently neither did the Wikipedia people. So
no.
What can I tell you?
Well, then I'm going to officially strike that from the record and my mind of she was never credited. Doesn't go as that.
No,
that was.
I was once.
Once.
But just once. Yeah.
Okay. That's very fair. So for Tenchi, you had said that you had moved to LA, and then I believe that is where that show was dubbed, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
How did you come across the role?
Well, okay. So I was in Chicago before I came to LA, and so was Matt Miller. And Matt and I were friends in Chicago. Oh. And then, some years later in LA, not 100 years later, but maybe 5 or 10 years later, Matt was married to a woman named Jessica Koplos, and he is no longer married to Jessica, but she's very cool and he's very cool, so we can talk about it. Yeah. Jessica was one of the producers on Tenchi Muyo, and so I did not know Jessica, but Matt knew me, and I guess maybe he must have said to her, well, let's audition Petrea because she might be right for this part. So that's how that happened. I knew Matt.
Hey,
and Matt knew Jessica. Yeah,
he was very right about that as well.
I like to think so.
Yeah. Were there other actors that were on that? I mean, I'm not sure. With how voice acting works, usually it's one person in the booth at a time. Probably not.
The first episode, Matt and I were actually in the booth together. We recorded together. Oh. And that was really fun, but it's harder for the engineers.
Yeah.
Because, we're actors. We want to react naturally, and so you're talking or saying or something when the other person is talking. It's really hard to edit that. So after that, we recorded separately.
Our co-host, Doug, who is not here joining us for this bit, frequent crosstalker, which is, makes it difficult because sometimes he talks at an inopportune time, but what he says is so great. So then I have to figure out, okay, how am I going to edit this and make sure that I don't desync everything? Because I want to make sure that stays in.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could understand that could be tough to do for, an entire, show, be it one episode or an entire series and things like that.
So that episode was anomalous because that's when I was Celeste Birch, and that's when Matt and I recorded in the studio together. After that, we changed how we were doing things, and I got to be me, and we moved on. Yeah.
Oh, gotcha. Do you have a different approach when tackling things for voice acting versus stage acting?
Oh, well, yes and no. Technically, it's very different. Obviously, you're using different muscles, and I haven't been on stage for quite a while. Probably, oh gosh, at least 15 years. I haven't been on stage. I haven't pursued on-camera work. I've mostly just done voiceover. And, but yeah, when you're on stage, first of all, big difference is that you don't have your script in front of you.
Oh, true.
So everything has to be memorized, and it has to be really innate. You have to know it really well so that you can focus on the other actors and focus on the action of the scene or whatever. And in anime or any voiceover, your script is in front of you. You might not have seen it before you got into the studio that day. So you're really going with the flow. You're really following your instincts. You don't have 3 or 4 weeks of rehearsal. You just, it's a whole, it actually is a whole different technique.
So pros and cons, you have your script in front of you, so you don't have to memorize the lines as well, but then also you're not as familiar with the material.
Right.
Or get to familiarize yourself with that, or really kind of work off of other actors, especially if you're in the booth all alone.
Yeah. Well, and that is the thing that I miss most in voice acting is having the other actor with me.
Right, yeah. I know that some productions, they may not continue to do that, because I know for a while The Simpsons, I believe, was having people that were all in a scene doing it at the same time.
Oh, that's so cool.
Right. I mean, you get a lot of, can share the energy back and forth and work off each other, which is really great. But
Did you know that I worked with Dan Castellaneta in Chicago?
I did not know that. Please
we were
expound
both
on that.
We were both in the National Touring Company at the Second City. Oh. And he came out and hit the big time, and I came out and hit the medium time.
Well, you're the big time in our hearts. That's for sure.
Thank you. Thank you.
So for Tenchi, what were the logistics for that project like? Because there are a number of TV series, there's a number of movies. Was it something that you did over a long period of time, or was it kind of something where they had you in nonstop for like a couple of months, get it done, and then like, okay, and then we'll be releasing this over time, and years out, your work is still being used, or kind of how was that done?
Well, it actually was done over time. We weren't in the studio for long weeks or anything like that. We would do an episode at a time. Let's see if I can remember correctly. We would do, like, there were 3 or 4 movies, I think, and we did those separately. And in a series, it seems to me we might have done a couple of episodes at a time and finished the whole series. But we started, I think the first one we recorded in 1995. And I want to say we went on and off very sparsely, or that's not the word I want, but intermittently.
Okay,
through about 2005. And so there wasn't anything after that, but then in 2014 we did I, Tenchi Muyo.
Right.
Yeah.
Which I've purchased, and I hadn't really sat down to watch it until a couple of days ago. I was like, okay, I at least have to revisit this and check it out just to be like, okay, how does this feel in comparison? And I have to say personally, like, I think that you nailed it out of the park right away. I was like, okay, yep, that is the Ryoko I know and love, so this is perfect.
I felt like it was very, very different.
Really?
So it's interesting to hear that because I'm so close to the project and so close to the character. Yeah, I felt like in I, Tenchi Muyo, the director wanted so much anger out of Ryoko. And so the moments when I instinctively wanted to be sexy or loving towards Tenchi, he wanted more fight.
Gotcha.
So it was, to me, it seemed a little different, but if it didn't seem that way to you, that's the most important thing.
Well, definitely there is a change in how that show operates for who the main cast is and how the character interactions that are there. I think it might be, there are a lot of moments in the older anime that have stuck in my brain are the more like impassioned, angry moments, perhaps. But yeah, certainly there's a bunch of scenes and things where it's much more sensitive and loving. But I think I just watched a couple episodes, and those episodes are short. They're like 4 minutes. So there isn't really a lot to work off of. But, you know, time passes, and we all sort of change. But I was like, you know, she's still got the same fervor for those moments, is I suppose how I should have worded that. Not so much
that's
like
interesting.
The exact
Cool.
same. Yeah.
Cool.
So that's very cool, because I was always wondering how that whole project worked, because it was so massive, you know, to figure out how that whole situation worked out.
Well, and I think we were all of us were local to LA at the time, and this was a project where you would go into the studio and work, and even Tenchi Muyo in 2014. It's really the last 10 years that have changed the business so much.
Right. Yeah.
And especially COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, the kind of good equipment you can get to do decent audio, I think, you know, has definitely become a bit more affordable, which definitely helps.
Right.
So yeah, that's very, very cool. So have you watched any Tenchi after doing the recording? Like, have you ever sat down and like, let's watch one of the movies or an episode, and like, what is the full product like with all of these actors?
Not recently.
That's
I
fair.
haven't. A long time ago, yeah, I did. And the one that sticks in my mind for some reason is the one where they're at the spa and all the girls are naked, except for when they played it on Cartoon Network.
Of course.
But that's the one I remember most clearly. And also, there is the one where Tenchi and Ryoko, they're at like the fair or something, and she gets to be more loving and sweet. That was really fun.
Oh, yeah. There is the third movie, which is really for the characters. Tenchi has disappeared, and it is just kind of Ryoko and Ayeka who have come to Tokyo to search for him.
Right, yeah.
And I have to say, I think in general, a lot of people don't enjoy that film because the whole cast kind of isn't there, and it's very, very different. But I have a big love for it just because those two characters have always kind of like been at each other's throats, and here they are, they're alone and working together for a common goal. And something about it, you know, sings to my heart, and I absolutely love it. And I think that, you know, especially Ryoko gets to have a lot of very sensitive and vulnerable moments that really kind of elevates that character. And I think that, you know, not to just be heaping praise on you, but I'm going to.
No, it's the character you're heaping praise on, right?
That's true. But of course
Ryoko.
you had, it's true. But you had a hand in it. I mean, you're the performance.
Let me just say that Jennifer Darling, who played Ayeka, and Jennifer and I rarely even saw each other. We barely know each other. We met, we would, you know, bump into each other in the lobby at the studio or whatever. But I always hoped that she recorded before I did so that I could act with her voice. With any of them, with Sherry Lynn, with Matt, with anybody in the cast, KT, I always hoped that they got there first so that I could hear them and work off them. And sometimes I did, and sometimes I was the first one in, and so they worked off of me. But it was an interesting way to work, you know?
Yeah. Did you guys ever have, you know, any time where you got together after a recording session or after the series had wrapped or anything? Like, did you get to spend any time together for anything like that?
Not exactly, sort of. Not exactly. We didn't like have a Tenchi party or anything. That would have been a good idea. Why didn't we do that? Honestly, that would have been a blast. I wish we had, but we didn't. since Matt and I are friends, I have seen him many times since and talked to him and exchanged emails. And but I did do I forget what they call it, but it was an anime con in Los Angeles where I was invited, and they did the Ladies of Tenchi Muyo. So it was me and Sherry Lynn and Rebecca Forstadt. And we did a panel, and that was super fun. And I stay in touch with Rebecca pretty well, and also Debbie Derryberry. So, and she was Ryo Oki.
Right.
Yeah. She's fabulous. Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
well, you didn't get to do a rap party, but the convention certainly sounds great. And sorry, Ken, go ahead.
No, sorry. I was just going to ask, when did you first realize that Ryoko was such an iconic, beloved character?
Let's see. We recorded in 1995. I think I began to figure it out probably... You're going to think I'm stupid, but
no.
I didn't really quite get it until probably 20 years later.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, when I started being more active online and the fans started sending me friend requests or following me or whatever, I started to realize, oh, wow, this, people really loved Ryoko. They loved the show, and it meant something to people, and I hadn't realized that.
There was an episode.
It was probably a good 20 years.
Yeah.
There was an episode in that third series, Tenchi in Tokyo, and it's Tenchi kisses the other girl from Tokyo. And I remember I was like 12 or 13 at the time, and I was so devastated. I just had to go stand in the backyard and just look up at the sky. Because for me, it was always Tenchi and Ryoko. And for that to have just been ripped away from me, it was like, oh no.
Boy, wow, that's a big deal.
I will say that I don't think you're stupid for not realizing that for 20 years, because I've seen other things where it happens to a lot. There was a pretty prolific animated Transformers movie in 1986 that came out in theaters, and there was quite a number of voice actors on that film. And then it wasn't until many years later where there were conventions for something like that, and the actors got invited back, and they came to a room for a panel that was absolutely stuffed with people and cheered when they walked in the room. Like, wow. I didn't know really anybody cared about this.
Yeah. Maybe I should say more like 2010, more like 15 years later, when I started getting invited to cons and stuff like that. Yeah.
Gotcha. Very, very fair. Yeah, I believe you came to one here in Minnesota in 2013,
I did.
Which is very, very excellent.
It was a good one.
Yeah.
Wait, I've been to two in Minnesota. I was in, no, never mind. That was North Dakota. So this one was,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which one it was.
It was at a lovely hotel. No, it wasn't a hotel. Well, it was a big shopping center nearby.
Yeah.
It was a really cool place.
I'm trying to remember which one it was, because it was right next to the Mall of America and IKEA.
Yes.
I think. So,
yes, the Mall of America.
Yeah.
I'm going to look up, because I still have a friend that I met there who was one of the organizers. I'm going to see if it's on her Facebook page.
Aha.
No.
My anime convention window is so small. I think I've only been to A-Con a few times. That's a convention here in Dallas.
Gotcha. Yeah, I haven't been a con-going person in a while. I made my friends. Oh, which one was it?
Anime Fusion.
Aha.
Yes.
So I can't recall. That one must still be around. I know that we have plenty of cons around here.
They have a Facebook page. Doesn't look like there's been a post on it for a couple of years, so.
Oh,
Nope. No, I was incorrect about that.
Oh.
Open now for 2025. Hello, fans and friends. Yep, Anime Fusion. That is in Minneapolis.
All right, perfect.
Cool.
Well, they're all great people then, because they had the great idea, of who to invite, and it turned out to be a really great time.
Yeah, they were pretty cool. I really liked it.
So I guess this is a possibly an odd question. I'm not entirely sure. So I know that
I'll let you know.
Okay. And we can strike it from the record in case that it's just totally out there and weird. So, of course, anime being made in Japan, it's voiced and things there beforehand before we get it here. And I know that different ADR directors and things kind of have different approaches for how they want to handle a show. Did you ever get to experience Io Arikasa, who is the Japanese voice actress for Ryoko? Did you ever listen to what her performance is like? Did you hear it before you did yours or after?
I actually met her.
Whoa.
Here's how ignorant I was and how clueless I was. I had no idea how this business worked. I didn't understand fandom at all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Okay.
So in 1995, after we recorded our first few episodes, and I had listened to Io Arikasa to hear what she did, and I couldn't, I wouldn't imitate her. I couldn't do that, but she's terrific, wonderful actress. And so one of our producers was Miyoko Mura, who was Japanese but lived in the United States, worked with Jessica. They co-produced. And Miyoko and Jessica took the whole cast to San Diego for what we called a convention, but it was a con. And it was probably a forerunner of Comic-Con. And Matt will tell you a whole different story. I don't remember. He says the car broke down. I don't remember that. Not at all. I just remember being there. And we did a panel, and Io Arikasa was there. And one of the other Japanese actors was there, too, one of the other women. And we were in a room with probably, about 50 people in the audience.
Yeah.
And I was kind of jealous of her because all of the guys were like so all over her. They were just so excited about her. I mean, she's very cute. And and she knew how to play that, I was kind of in awe of her. She is quite the performer, and she was just a delight. So yes, I actually met her very briefly.
Wow.
But that's my experience of her, which lasted about an hour. And I think we even got our picture taken together.
Oh wow!
I might. It's in my Google Docs somewhere.
Oh, would that be showing up on Instagram for a Throwback Thursday at all sometime?
That's a good idea. Let me write that down.
Yeah, I could even let you know when this episode will come out. So if you wanted to, we could have some synergy.
Oh yeah. Okay. Good idea.
Yeah, no
you
problem.
Are so smart.
Oh, well, thank you. That works for the applause. Just telling me I'm smart works. Oh, that's wonderful. You've been sharing a whole bunch of these stories, which is really great. And I just had a section in here. It's like, oh, share your stories. But it's like, she's been doing this the whole time. I don't have to tease that out. But are there any specific lines for Ryoko or anything? Like you had talked about, some episodes that you remembered, like them going to the festival and her getting to kind of be more loving with Tenchi. Are there any, specific scenes or lines or anything that kind of stick with you or, are in your memory?
I don't remember a lot of specific lines, but I do remember scenes. Mm-hmm. And one was a dramatic scene when at the end of the episode, or maybe even the series, you think Ryoko's dying. She's on a spaceship, she's bleeding, and all she can think of is Tenchi. That one I remember because I got to do some drama, and I loved all the battle scenes, but we couldn't do 2 days in a row of that because it was so hard on the voice.
Oh yeah.
But let's see, there were some really funny moments, and I do remember one where I think Tenchi's mother shows up. And she mistakes me for Sasami.
Oh.
And, me. Ryoko. Well, I was kind of close to the character, let's just say. I did kind of identify with her in some ways.
Oh, yeah.
Both independent women. But that scene, I remember, that was a really funny scene. Very fun to do.
Oh, yeah. I think I know the exact one that you're talking about. And it comes across that you were having fun with it.
Oh, good. Good. Something else I'd love to say, the show required so many people. The scripts would come from Japan in Japanese, and then somebody would translate them into English. And then they had to sort of be translated again because a lot of Japanese jokes just do not translate, or references that just don't work or whatever. And then it had to be rewritten again to match mouth flaps.
Yes.
Of the characters. So the people working on the scripts did amazing, amazing, amazing work because there was never a glitch. They were always perfect.
Yeah.
And that was really quite a job.
One thing I like to do when watching anime, and I've always been this way, is when I'm watching a dub, I like to turn the subtitles on for what would have been if I was watching in Japanese. And I was so shocked watching Tenchi that it's not that far off. They're really...
Oh, really?
Yeah, close to the intent and what that line was in the subtitles as well.
Wow.
So even though it goes through that many revisions, they were still keeping on task of, okay, what is the information that needs to get across? What's the spirit of this scene or this line? That's
right. They weren't
impressive.
rewriting the story, but just translating the language.
Yeah. Which is, pretty good. There are some productions that kind of just throw it to the wind, like, you know what? We got this. We'll just go for it.
Wow.
Wow. That's really great. It's impressive how great everything turned out. So it's very clear that like everybody working on that was, very talented and giving it their all. And
every single person really, I think that's one of the reasons why it's been so popular and why even now people watch it is because every one of us, all of us, the producers, the engineers, the writers, and the actors, we all put in, a lot of heart, a lot of care. Yeah.
That's fantastic. And I'm going to make sure that I'm always remembering that whenever I'm watching the show is, obviously I could tell that there was, a lot of effort put into it, but hearing from somebody who worked on it, and just really knowing it is really exciting because this is a treasured show for me.
I'm
frequently
so glad. It's when you set out to do a job like that, somebody just calls you and they say, you got the job and you're going to go to the studio at, 10 a.m. on such and such date. And you go and you record and you do your very, very best. But you don't know that, God, nearly 30 years later, people are still going to be watching it and caring about it and loving it. What a gift. Right? How lucky am I, huh? That I got to do something like that. That's so great.
You're getting weirdos like me who email you out of the blue and be like, please come on my show. But, because I had thought about that. I was like, okay, I want to ask all these questions. But, if I put myself in the shoes of like, if somebody asked me questions about a job I did 30 years ago, I'd be like, oh man, I'm not going to be able to remember a lot.
Well, there's a lot I don't remember for sure. Like Matt says, the car broke down. Oh, I don't remember that. You'd think I'd remember that. I don't.
Oh, I mean, memories can be funny and fuzzy. That's just kind of how it works.
Yeah.
Is there any other particular thing that you want to share about your experience working on the Tenchi series or, interactions with fans, fandom, anything like that?
No, not really. No. Not that I can think of. I mean, it's obviously not what I'm working on now, but it was, and in fact, it was never full time, really. But it's always been a surprise to me just how much people loved it and still do. It's really my great good fortune.
Yeah. Speaking of surprises,
yes.
I have a couple for you.
Oh.
So I have a couple extra questions here because Ken and I listened to the audiobook for Camelot and Vine and we have questions.
Oh my gosh. Oh my God, you guys just made my day. As if it wasn't already made.
Oh. So I wanted to ask, when writing Camelot and Vine, which for people who are listening to this and are like, what is this? This was a really great fiction book that you had written, and I believe it came out in about 2012, 2013 for its
2013,
first printing? Okay, gotcha.
But the audiobook just came out last year.
Yes, exactly. Yes. And I'll admit, I like to read. I read a lot of things, but I don't end up reading a lot of books very often. So my kind of saving grace is having audiobooks. And I know that, you had written this book before, and I was like, I'm just waiting because I know that there's going to be an audiobook eventually, and I'm sure it's going to be great. And, I'm glad that I waited because it was fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. But
when we're done, I'll give you the links so everybody can go buy my book and make me rich.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We fully endorse that. Right. So when you were writing it, I was curious what aspects of the story and setting and things did you pull from your own interests and knowledge versus sitting down and researching for something you might have to do with that? Like, are you a big Arthurian legend buff? Or have you been to Stonehenge before?
Okay, well, so I wasn't a big Arthurian legend buff. Mm-hmm. I also had not had an affair with a married man. That was actually also not from my own personal experience. But I had done some commercial acting in Los Angeles, and I got the idea for the book. How much time have you got?
Well, I said you have. Yeah, I had told you, like, if you could set aside an hour, that'd be great. But I really have all evening. So.
Okay. I got the idea for the book when I went to England in 1999. I got accepted into a summer acting course with members of the Royal Shakespeare Company. Oh. And this was for 1 month at Oxford in 1999. And it was absolutely life-changing, wonderful experience. And after the 4 weeks at Oxford, I still had 2 more weeks in England, and I traveled around. A friend came and joined me, and we traveled around mostly in the southwest, not all the way to Cornwall, but we were in the area of South Cadbury and Stonehenge. We went to Stonehenge for sure, which is, I don't care how many tourists you have walking around that place. It's still stunning. Wow. It's still amazing. Anyway, I had this idea that I would want to... South Cadbury is the location of Cadbury Hill Fort, and it has legends around it, as many places in England do, that King Arthur had lived there at this fort. And well, that idea got into my head, and I thought, well, how cool would it be to go there when King Arthur was there and see what it was like? And that started my research to try to see, well, okay, if he had been there, when would he have been there, and what was life like in England at that time, or which was not England, it was Britain. So yeah, I had a total blast researching that, setting it in and around 500 AD, give or take, and putting a modern person there, an actress who falls through a gap in time and accidentally saves King Arthur's life, and then she gets, deeply involved with him, all the while really kind of lying to him about who she is. So it's a really fun story, I think, and when he finds out who she is, that's when she is in peril. I mean, he kind of knows who she is, but he doesn't know really.
Right.
So, yeah. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I'm so proud of it. I'm so proud of that novel. I'm so proud of the audiobook. I got nominated for an award.
Yes.
Which is the Society of Voice Arts and Sciences. I got nominated for author narration. And guess who won?
Was it Matt?
No.
I haven't seen one. Was it you?
No. Oh. It was Bono. From U2.
Really? I did not know that he had written his own book.
He wrote his own book and narrated it, and it was fabulous.
Oh.
There are worse things than to lose to Bono.
It was a fantastic book. I like to think I came in second, but I don't really know. They don't give you second place. But Bono won the award.
I thought the book was fantastic, and
thank you, Ken.
My wife listened to a little bit of it with me in the car, and I think there's a part where you're doing the voice for, I think for Arthur, it might have been Bedwyr or Sagramore, but you take on a much deeper tone. And my wife turned to me, she said, "Is that someone else doing that voice?" And I'm like, "No, that's all her."
Oh, how cool. Oh. I love that.
I'm also going to heap on some praise from the writing position for it, because I first started listening to it on my way to go visit my mother. She lives a couple hours out of town here, and I was just rolling along with it, and our main character, Casey, had finally made it to speaking with Arthur at the fort. And I was just pulling into the driveway when, he had asked, like, am I going to, at this upcoming battle, save Britain? And she said, like, that, yes, you will. And that was my first act of treason. And and that's where I turn off the car and I'm like, now I have to go do something else and not think about this when I just want to sit and do more, because it's such a great way to end a chapter that I'm like, oh no, I wish I could put down life for a second.
Oh, you guys, thank you so much. I'm really proud of it. And I wrote another book, which is nonfiction. It's about acting in LA. It's called Act As If. And I don't know if that one's going to be an audiobook, because the acting business has changed as much as the voiceover business has in the last 10 years. So I'm kind of not sure about that one.
Gotcha.
But I finished another novel, and that's out looking for an agent right now, and we'll just see. I really love writing fiction. It's a wonderful challenge, and it's so exciting for me.
Yeah, I really hope that it finds its way out there, because I think I had read the blurb about it, and I was like, okay, I'm counting down the days for when this comes out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm trying to see here. For things you researched in writing the book, was there anything in particular that was surprising or interesting that you learned and came about?
Let me think. Well, it was all interesting. It's really the whole political situation in Britain in 500 AD was very fraught with Angles and Saxons and Britons and tribes, and there's a lot we don't know. We call that the Dark Ages because we don't have anything that was written by anybody who experienced it firsthand. So everything that we have telling us about that period came more than 100 years later, almost 200 years later. So we can really only kind of guess, except for when we have archaeology. And so, excuse me, one thing that I absolutely loved is there actually was a settlement at Cadbury Hill Fort, and they did have a great hall, and they did have smaller huts to the side of it, and that was excavated, I want to say 1976, maybe it was 1967, but I got a book about that and read all about that, and that was so exciting. And then a few years later, in 2017, my husband and I were in England, and we spent a couple of days in South Cadbury, so I got to go there. I got to go to Cadbury Hill Fort, and I knew it like the back of my hand. I had spent so much time there in my imagination that it was almost like a homecoming.
Wow. That's very, very cool. I assume, you, before going there, like there must have been, photos and things of the excavation site.
Yeah.
So did you use those as basis for a lot of things? Okay. Very, very cool.
And there were a couple of anime fans who had written to me from Great Britain, and one who was going that way, and so he went there and he took photos and sent them to me. That was incredible.
Wow.
Incredibly helpful. That was Carl. I'm always grateful to him for that.
Well, thank you, Carl, if you're listening. We appreciate it as well. for recording this, you do audiobook recordings for other novels and things. Was there anything you did differently for recording for your own book versus other people's books?
Well, the real difference is it was harder. It was harder because when I'm narrating somebody else's book, I'm hired to do it because, apparently they think I'm right for the part. So I narrate it freely. When I was doing my own book, I'm the director and I'm the producer, and I'm pretty hard on myself. Like, no, go back, fix that. That wasn't right at all. And I'm sure that actually if I had just relaxed, it would have been fine. But it was hard to do that because I was being kind of a perfectionist about it. So that's really the main difference. It was just harder. But I got it done, and I'm proud of it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to, relax and not be so hard on yourself. And I don't want to reward being too mean on yourself. But you know what? You really put out a really great product. So I'm not sure if that means suffering is worth it. But it was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Ken, did you have any other questions you wanted to throw out here about this? Because I know you just finished it very recently. I finished it a couple of weeks ago.
I finished it this morning. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
The part that's always stuck out to me throughout the whole book is, you talk about it being the Dark Ages, and so certain names are different than they are in the legend. And it's the scene where Casey's revealing everything to Mervyn early on. And he says, so no one knows really about us in the future, just beyond legend. And then she says, yeah. And then he says, well, we'll have to do something about that.
Don't tell him anymore.
Yeah. What?
Yeah. We'll beep that out.
No,
People will be like, what did they?
Yeah. And those names, by the way, that was part of my research. I found my rule for myself was basically use the oldest one I could find because that would be closest to the original. So Bedwyr, Myrddin, these older names were, I thought, a little closer to the original. That was my idea anyway.
Okay.
Who knows what the originals were?
Right.
But some of those were from old Welsh legends, or what's the name of that book where... well, I can't think of it. Anyway, there were so many books. I read so many books.
Which had to have been, fun in its own right.
I love that.
I mean, I'm a nerd. I like watching anime. So then being able to do a podcast was like, oh, darn, now I have to watch more stuff that I like, So it's like reading a book for research for writing your own.
I have to look at more stuff.
I know. So I just want to say that it's fantastic. And anybody out there who, enjoys, well-written fiction, well-researched as well, and enjoys a really great audiobook by a voice that you probably know and love, or at least should, and that's a good place to start, is to check out Camelot and Vine, and we'll definitely include some links over in separate places, so that way it's easy for everybody to check it out, and I highly recommend you do.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. I think that's kind of it, unless there's, anything you want to leave us or the listeners with.
Just thank you. Thank you all. Thank you to the Tenchi fans and the Ryoko fans. It's really an honor to have done a show that meant so much to so many people. And I say that sincerely. I think I sound a little sappy, but I mean it. It's just really cool. I mean, here it is, nearly 30 years later, and I'm a guest on a podcast because of that. That's pretty great. Thank you.
Well, we all say thank you back.
Yeah.
And thank you for your time, and hopefully everything you've got going on goes great, because you deserve it. Gosh darn it.
Gosh darn it. Thanks, you guys.
And,
no problem.
and with applause?
Oh, yes.
Oh, right.
Great job, Petrea. Oh, man, that was a whole lot of fun. What did you guys think? Did you enjoy that? Should we do more interviews? Because I definitely liked it. That was a lot of fun to be able to sit and talk with Petrea about her experiences with the Tenchi franchise and, hear a little bit more about her and her experience and her journey. It's been really great. And I don't want to miss out on plugging, again, her book, Camelot and Vine, and also Act As If. And I wanted to point you guys specifically to some things like her website, which is just petreaburchard.com. If you want to find where you can read or listen to the audiobook of those books, there's books, the number 2, read.com/Camelot and Vine, or books2 with the number 2, read.com/Act As If. And also, if you want some special fun messages from Petrea or Ryoko in particular, you can check her out on Cameo. That's just cameo.com/Petrea_Ryoko.
And we'll have all of those links in the descriptions of this episode as well. So if you weren't writing down as we were saying them, just scroll down a little bit and you're all set.
Yeah, we've got you covered. Thank you guys again so much for listening. We love it. We love talking with you guys, and we're really excited to go on this fun little bonus episode journey with another franchise that we love that might not be our favorite in the world, but it definitely is near and dear to our hearts.
Oh, wait, over here. My heart's over here.
Right, exactly. Doug, remember what side of the chest your heart is.
Right here.
Oh, where the belly is. That's interesting. Well, thank you guys again so much, and we will check you, Matinator.
Close.